November 1945. A detention camp near Lannion, France. The morning mist clung to the barbed wire like frozen breath. Klara woke up on the damp straw mattress, her body aching from the cold. In this camp, she had lost everything that defined her as a woman. Her jewelry was stolen. Her coat was traded for bread. Her hair was matted and hidden under a rough scarf. But as the other women groaned and stirred, Klara reached her hand deep into the hidden lining of her tunic. Her fingers touched something hard and smooth. It was safe. It was a toothbrush. It wasn't made of plastic. It was an old-fashioned one, with a white bone handle and natural bristles, now worn and splayed. In a world of filth where the latrines overflowed and the mud was ankle-deep, this small object was her anchor. It was the line between being a human and being an animal. Klara unwrapped it from a scrap of clean linen she had saved. She treated it with the reverence of a religious relic. The ritual began at the water trough. There was no toothpaste, of course, just the freezing water from the pump. But the act of scrubbing her teeth, of cleaning away the taste of stale bread and fear, gave her a momentary sense of control. For 2 minutes, every morning, she wasn't prisoner 408. She was Klara, a woman who cared about herself. She scrubbed vigorously, ignoring the shivering of her body, focusing only on the feeling of cleanliness in her mouth. "Hurry up," a guard yelled from the watchtower. The spell broke. Klara quickly dried the brush on the linen scrap. She didn't just throw it in her pocket. She wrapped it carefully, protecting the bristles from the lint and dirt of her uniform. She tucked it back into the secret seam, patting it once to make sure it was secure. She didn't know that today, this small act of vanity would be noticed. She didn't know that her treasure was about to become her curse. The latrine door kicked open with a violent crash. The sound echoed off the cold tiles like a gunshot. The women, who were scrubbing the floor with rags made from old sacks, froze instantly. They scrambled to their feet, forming a ragged line against the wet wall. Corporal Miller, a guard known for his boredom and cruelty, stepped inside. He wrinkled his nose at the smell of bleach and ammonia. The women held their breath. They had scrubbed these toilets for hours. They were spotless. They knew that in a camp riddled with dysentery, a dirty toilet meant death. But Miller wasn't looking for hygiene. He was looking for entertainment. He walked slowly down the row of stalls. His boots squeaked on the damp concrete. He inspected each toilet bowl with the scrutiny of a diamond appraiser. He leaned in, checking under the rims, looking for a speck, a stain, anything. He stopped at the third stall. It was clean, sparkling clean. But Miller reached into his pocket and pulled out a white handkerchief. He ran it under the inner rim of the porcelain bowl. He pulled it out and stared at it. It was still white, but he frowned, turning the cloth until he found a microscopic speck of dust. Maybe just ash from the air. "Filth," he whispered, turning to the women. He held up the handkerchief like it was covered in blood. "You pigs, you live in filth because you like it." He walked towards them, his eyes scanning their terrified faces. He stopped in front of Klara. She was staring straight ahead, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was the one who had cleaned that stall. She knew it was clean, but she also knew that truth didn't matter here. Miller stepped closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of tobacco and hair oil, a sickeningly civilized smell in this place of rot. Then he saw it. As Klara breathed heavily in fear, her chest rose and fell. The slight movement shifted the fabric of her tunic. There in her left breast pocket was a distinct, rigid outline. It was too long to be a spoon, too straight to be a piece of bread. Miller's eyes narrowed. He knew the shape. He had seen prisoners hoarding them before. He tapped the bulge with the tip of his baton. Tap, tap. The sound was dull but unmistakable. It was the sound of hard bone against fabric. "What is that?" Miller asked softly. He didn't yell. His voice dropped to a whisper, which was far more terrifying. He tapped the pocket again with his baton. Klara froze. Her hand instinctively moved to cover her heart, shielding the hidden object. "Nothing, sir," she lied, her voice barely audible. "Just personal effects." Miller laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound. "There are no personal effects here, prisoner. Everything belongs to the camp. Show me. Now." The air in the latrine grew heavy. The other women looked away, praying he wouldn't turn his attention to them. Klara's trembling fingers reached into the pocket. She couldn't disobey. Disobedience meant the hole. The solitary confinement pit where they threw you without food for days. Slowly, agonizingly, she pulled out the small bundle wrapped in linen. She unfolded the cloth. The toothbrush lay in her dirty palm, like a jewel. The white bone handle gleamed in the harsh electric light. The bristles were worn but clean. It was a pristine object from a civilized world, completely out of place in this room of rust and ammonia. "A toothbrush," Miller mused, leaning closer. He plucked it from her hand with 2 fingers, as if it were something curious. "You still brush your teeth? You think you are going somewhere, to a ball, perhaps?" He turned the brush over, inspecting the bristles. "You ladies complain that you don't have enough rags to clean the toilets properly. You say the cloth is too coarse, that it misses the spots under the rim." He looked at the toilet bowl, then back at the brush. A dark realization dawned on Klara's face. "Please, sir," Klara whispered. "Take it. Throw it away. But please don't." She couldn't finish the sentence. The toothbrush was the only thing that touched her mouth. It was the only thing that kept the rot away. Miller shook his head, feigning disappointment. "Throw it away? That would be wasteful. The German Reich taught you not to be wasteful, didn't it?" He shoved the toothbrush back into her hand. His grip was hard, forcing her fingers to close around the handle. The order came like a physical blow. "This tool," Miller said, pointing to the brush, "has fine bristles, perfect for fine work, perfect for that speck of dust I found." He pointed to the third stall. "Get on your knees. Use your brush. Clean the inside of the rim. And I want you to scrub until the bristles are flat." The silence in the room was absolute. It was a command designed to destroy dignity. If it did this, she would never be clean again. Klara looked at the other women. They stared back with wide, terrified eyes. They couldn't help her. If they stepped forward, they would be next. Klara looked at the bone handle. She remembered her bathroom back home. The smell of peppermint. The feeling of safety. That life was gone. She slowly sank to her knees. The cold dampness of the concrete soaked through her thin skirt. She crawled towards the toilet bowl, the toothbrush, held out like a weapon she was forced to turn on herself. Klara leaned over the bowl. The smell hit her first. It was the stench of stale urine and strong bleach rising up to meet her face. She closed her eyes for a second, trying to summon the memory of peppermint toothpaste. But it was gone. With a trembling hand, she lowered the toothbrush. The white bristles, which had been so pristine moments ago, broke the surface of the toilet water. She paused. It felt like a violation, like drowning a friend. "Begin," Miller ordered from above. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The sound was tiny, pathetic, and agonizingly loud in the silent room. A toothbrush is designed for gentle circles on enamel, not for scouring rough porcelain. Klara scrubbed the waterline. The bristles splayed immediately, bending backward under the pressure. The foul water splashed onto her hand, soaking the cuff of her sleeve. She scrubbed harder, trying to make the invisible spot disappear, trying to make this nightmare end quickly. "Deeper," Miller said, tapping his boot. He wasn't satisfied with the rim. "Get under the lip. Get into the trap. That's where the bacteria hides." Klara choked back a sob. She pushed her hand further into the bowl, her knuckles brushing against the wet ceramic. She shoved the brush into the dark, narrow throat of the toilet. The water turned gray and murky as she agitated the grime. She wasn't just cleaning a toilet. She was erasing herself. Every stroke erased a little more of Klara, the woman, and left only Klara, the prisoner. The brush began to disintegrate. It wasn't made for this violence. Some of the natural bristles snapped off, floating in the water like dead insects. The remaining ones were stained a permanent, sickly yellow-brown. The white bone handle, once smooth and warm, was now slippery with filth. Klara watched the object die in her hand. This brush had traveled with her from her home, survived the bombings, survived the transport trains. It had survived everything, only to die here, inches from a guard's boot. That's enough, Miller decided. He didn't check if the toilet was clean. He didn't care. He looked at the ruined brush in Klara's dripping hand and smiled. His work was done. You see, he addressed the room. With the right tool, anything can be purified. He turned on his heel and walked to the door. Lights out in 10 minutes. The door slammed shut, leaving the women in the echoing silence of the latrine. Klara stared at the thing in her hand. The other women rushed to her. Klara, wash it. One whispered, we can boil it. Klara looked up, her eyes hollow. She knew the truth. You can boil the bristles, but you can't boil the memory. She stood up, her knees wet and bruised. She walked to the trash bin in the corner. She didn't cry, she simply let go. The toothbrush hit the bottom of the bin with a hollow thud. It was over. Dawn came, gray and unforgiving. Klara woke up before the whistle. For months, her first instinct had been to reach into the hidden lining of her tunic. Her hand moved automatically, sleep-heavy fingers groping for the smooth bone handle. She pressed against the fabric. There was nothing there, just the flat, rough wool against her ribs. The realization hit her fresh, like a new wound. The pocket was empty. The brush was gone. She lay there, staring at the wooden slats of the bunk above her, feeling a phantom limb sensation. A piece of her was missing. She walked to the water trough like a ghost. Around her, other women were performing their morning rituals. Some splashed water on their faces. A few lucky ones used their own hidden rags. Klara stood at the pump. She cupped freezing water in her hands and rinsed her mouth. She ran her tongue over her teeth. They felt fuzzy, coated in the film of sleep and yesterday's bread. She tried to rub them with her finger, but the rough skin tasted of dirt and iron. It wasn't cleaning. It was just smearing the filth around. She spat into the mud. It was a surrender. The others had learned the lesson. Greta, who slept 2 bunks down, had watched Klara's humiliation. Greta had a small comb, a tortoiseshell comb she had hidden in her boot for 6 months. As Klara walked back from the trough, head bowed, Greta sat on her bed. She looked at her comb. She looked at the door where Gord Miller might enter at any moment. Fear won. Greta stood up, walked to the loose floorboard in the corner, and dropped the comb into the dark crawl space beneath the barracks. Better to lose it to the rats than to have it used against her. Klara stopped caring. That morning she didn't fix her headscarf. She didn't tuck in her shirt. The toothbrush had been the anchor of her discipline. Without it, the slide into apathy was fast. She sat on her bunk, staring at the wall. When the guard yelled for roll call, she moved slower than usual. She wasn't defiant. She was broken. Miller walked past her in the lineup. He glanced at her chest pocket. It was flat. He smiled, a small, satisfied twitch of the lips. He had won. He had turned the lady into a prisoner. 50 years later, Munich, 1995. Klara was 80 years old now. She lived in a warm apartment with thick carpets and large windows, but her sanctuary was the bathroom. It was tiled in white marble, scrubbed daily until it gleamed. There was no smell of bleach here, only expensive lavender soap. But if you opened the medicine cabinet, you would see the scar. It was lined with rows and rows of brand new packaged toothbrushes, dozens of them. She took a fresh brush from a pack. Every morning the ritual was the same. She cracked open the plastic, the sound echoing slightly like a snapping bone. She brushed her teeth for exactly 2 minutes. Then she looked at the bristles. They were wet, but perfectly clean. Yet in Klara's mind she saw grayness. She tasted the rust and ammonia of the camp latrine. She felt the guard's eyes on her back. She dropped the toothbrush into the trash. Used once. Discarded. She couldn't put it back in a cup. She couldn't use it again tomorrow. Once a brush had been used, it was contaminated in her soul. It was a waste of money, a waste of plastic, but it was the price of her sanity. Her granddaughter had asked once, "Grandma, why so many brushes?" Klara had just smiled a sad, broken smile. "Because," she whispered, "I never want to scrub anything but my teeth. Ever again. Some stains never wash out." The guard took her dignity for 10 minutes, but he stole her peace for 50 years. If this story of survival and the scars we carry moved you, please subscribe. Share this video to remember that the cruelest weapons in war aren't always guns. Sometimes they are the simple things we use every day. Thank you for watching.